If you don't have enough money saved for your retirement, like me and millions of other people, you're not alone. Welcome to the Wise Retirement Podcast. We'll learn how to invest, save, and earn more toward a comfortable retirement. Hi, I'm Angela Kay.
And I'm Reginald Thornton, along for this ride as well. Did you know that 20% of Americans age 50 and above have no retirement savings at all? Even worse, 3 times that amount are concerned that they don't have enough saved for a comfortable retirement.
Reg and I will talk with experts in their field, explore catch-up strategies, share success stories that we hope are inspiring, and learn about family wealth-building techniques that actually work. We'll also break down those complex financial topics into clear, actionable steps that everyone can understand and use.
Welcome to the ride, everyone. Do you know what's inside of your 401k? Is it stocks? Is it bonds? Is it something else? If you're over 40 and you haven't checked lately, you could be leaving thousands on the table.
And we don't want to do that.
Mm-mm.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Retirement Podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into what a simple 401k check looks like. We're going to check what our 401k has in it, and we'll show you the common blind spots that people don't see when it comes to their money and how to tell if you're saving or growing the right way, and an easy way to fix that if it's not.
Absolutely. So stick around. By the end, you'll know 3 things to audit in your account so you can start growing it so that it doesn't work against you, more for you in that way. And be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber yet.
That's right. So today's guest is Martin Matthews. He's co-founder of M Wealth Group that he co-founded with his wife, Chelsea. And Martin is a financial strategist who helps families move from confusion to clarity when it comes to their money. And together, he and his wife have over 25 years experience. They're on a mission to build and help people what they call an unbreakable financial house.
I need to know how to build that for sure. Anyway, so stick around and let's see how Martin can help us build that house. So, welcome to the show, Martin. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Reg. Good to meet you and good to be here with you.
Absolutely. Ange told me that you guys have spoken before, so we're happy to have you back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back on.
For sure. So, let's talk 401ks for a while. When people say they're investing in 401ks generally, do they actually know what they're invested in? Are they, with your experience with people, do you think that they're clear about what their 401ks are invested in?
No, they are not. Whether it's by design or accidental, most people do not know what they have when it comes to retirement, especially with their 401k. So, just so viewers and listeners have an understanding, a 401k is a section in a tax code. But in reality, it's not actually an investment. It's a section in a tax code that allows you to create a retirement arrangement. So this retirement arrangement, so I'll tell people to think of your 401k as a bucket. Inside of this bucket is where you have the actual investments. So an example of this is your 401k can actually be sitting in cash. Somebody can actually send cash to their 401k and is never actually invested in anything. We've seen that happen before. So for years, the person just sat in cash and they thought they were actually investing because they thought their 401k was the investment, whereas it was just a bucket. And then in there, you direct which investments, you want to have based on what your employer has made available.
So I guess the question I'll have, given what you just said, your employers will give you to take a word from you, a bucket of options via your 401k that it will be invested in. But if you, Martin, gave Reginald cash and we didn't designate what bucket it would go in, it would just sit there and not grow.
Exactly. So the most common investments in the 401k would be mutual funds.
Mm-hmm.
And a mutual funds is basically where all 3 of us decided we're going to pool our money together and we're going to give it to someone to manage this money. It's called a mutual fund manager. So it's mutual because all of us mutually throw our money in there into this fund. And the idea is the manager is competent enough to manage our money well, and that he will reach certain benchmarks. And you will have different types of mutual funds. There's thousands and thousands of mutual funds. And so people will pick one, and each mutual fund generally will have a target that they're going for. Some mutual funds are a mix of stocks and bonds. They could be 50% stocks and 50% bonds. So stocks is essentially ownership in a company. Bonds is a debt instrument, like you're lending money to a company when you buy a bond and it pay you interest on there. So bonds are perceived as generally more stable because they don't fluctuate as much as stocks do. But stocks may have more upside. So a person says, well, I want a little bit of both. So they might buy a fund that may be 50% stocks and 50% bonds.
Gotcha.
Or depending on the risk level, they may have something that's 60% stocks or 70% stocks and 30% bonds. The mutual fund manager basically, let's say it's a 50-50 fund, just to keep it simple. The mutual fund manager, his goal is to keep the assets of the fund. So let's say, Reg, I send $100, Angela sends $100, and you send $100. So all of us, we got this $300 in this fund, and we send it to this manager. Well, this manager, his goal will take out of that $300 we send, he's going to take half of that and buy stocks and half of that and buy bonds. Now we're kind of leaving it up to him as to what types of stocks he buys and what types of bonds he buys. And so that's the general idea. But then eventually the stocks, let's say the stocks do really well. Now all of a sudden, a higher percentage of that portfolio is now in stocks. So now the manager may sell some of those stocks to go and buy bonds. Well, what if it doesn't make sense to sell stocks at that time? What if it makes sense to just let the stocks be there?
Ride it out.
But because, yeah, exactly. But because this fund is a 50-50 fund, he kind of try to keep that parity, right? So that's what a lot of mutual funds are trying to achieve. And then you, as the investor in your 401k, you're picking the funds that's available to you that your employer will make somewhere around like 10 funds available. It's a balance of growth and safety and bonds, some combination thereof. There's some rules and what a variation of funds that an employer needs to make available in that plan. And so then you go to HR when you sign up for your 401k and you check a couple of boxes, or maybe you do it online and you say, I want this fund. I want, out of the money I'm sending to my 401k, maybe 25% go into fund A, another 50% go into fund B. And then you're responsible now to make sure that the investments are actually still continue to be appropriate for you as your needs change, as your age change, and maybe your risk level changes.
That brings up many questions. One that floated up to the top was, so basically we have to be responsible for not necessarily managing our 401k, but we were responsible for reviewing that 401k. I don't know how regularly we should, but what are some of the common mistakes you see, I guess, in the allocations of people's 401ks?
The first mistake is most of the time people are guessing. In my, before I got into this industry, my first job I got a 401k, and I asked, can you help me figure out what to invest in? And the HR person said, no, it's actually not legal for them to give you investment advice. So they said, no, you have to look at it and you have to make your own decision. And the reason why is because they don't want to be responsible in case you have a loss. They don't want to be responsible for that. And so I looked at it, and then one said growth. It was a growth mutual fund. I'm like, okay, what do I want my money to do? I want the money to grow. So I'm going to check growth mutual fund. That was the extent of my research into it. That was how I made that decision.
Right.
So
it was smart. It was smart. It grew.
Yeah,
I want my
growth.
money to grow. Yeah, let's go
I'll
this
take
way.
I had some logic behind it, but so that's kind of the first thing is that people make the investment without really knowing what it means. Now, what percentage of it was stocks? What percentage of it was bonds? I couldn't tell you. I just know it said grow, and I wanted my money to grow, so I picked growth fund. But that's the first thing. The second thing is not really looking at it, not confronting it, meaning just looking at it. And a lot of times people will put their money into their 401k and never really look at it or understand it. We survey people on how many people actually understand their statements. The vast majority of people do not understand their investment statements. Even people with hundreds of thousands of dollars will have somebody send us a statement. They got $500,000 in there. They're like, I don't know what is actually invested in. Well, you would a lot of times people hear that and they think, wow, the person has $500,000, 750,000. They don't know what they're invested in. Yes. They've just been putting that money in there for the last 20, 30 years. and they get their statement. And if it's up, the person's happy and they're like, okay, it's working. I don't need to change or do anything with it.
Right.
But it's really just looking at it so you have your own knowledge, responsibility, and control over it. Because ultimately, that as the investor, you bear the full responsibility of that account.
Mm,
Because if the manager loses your money, there's not really any recourse you have on there because you willingly put your money into that fund. So you just end up losing the money. So by you looking at it and understanding it, trying to understand it is a good step. Some statements will have a glossary. One of the
hmm
issues in the world of finances is they use words that people do not understand.
hmm
And I'm not just talking about the average person out there, like the 401k investor. I'm talking about sometimes the financial advisors don't understand the words themselves.
Interesting.
There's a lot of industries where I've misunderstood words. Like you go to see the doctor. The moment his doctor starts speaking in all his lingo, and you're like, break it down in plain English.
Right, right,
Please.
right. Exactly.
So what happens is you get your statement, your 401k statement, and it's not often in plain English. So the moment you look at it, you see a word there that you misunderstand, and you're like, I don't really know I don't even know what this thing is saying. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, whatever. I look at the number, it's more than it was last year, so that's fine.
Right,
Mm,
And that's what happens.
right.
So that can become a mistake. So one, not
yeah.
first mistake's not really knowing what they're putting their money into when it started. Like I did. I didn't know. I just checked growth.
Right,
And,
right.
number 2 is not looking at it periodically. Periodically could be you could look at it quarterly, you could look at it you don't have to look at it every single day, but
Mhm.
quarterly, I think the closer somebody gets to retirement, the more they wanna keep their eye on it because a major drop could impact your lifestyle. And, kinda the 3rd, if you think about a sequence, the 3rd thing is person gets a statement and they may not think about the glossary. Sometimes it's a glossary, sometimes they're not. But looking up any words on your statements you don't understand. It's a little bit of homework, but it actually gives you much more understanding on your investments.
So, with the information you just gave us, you say review it quarterly, and in the process of reviewing it, like if I let's say for instance, I get my statement, I review it, and I'm like, I'm down $10,000 quarter. What at that point am I to do? Am I because we're always told, okay, you put your money in the market, there's going to be an ebb and flow to it. So if I look at it, I'm down 10,000. Do I panic and go, hey, Martin, what's going on here? Or do I say, you know what, let me ride this out because the past 3 quarters were good. This is just a downtime. What am I to do at that point?
The answer is depends. And I'll give you an example to look at a framework to think with. So Warren Buffett is probably the greatest investor of all time.
hmm
Warren Buffett's company currently, 2026, sitting in hundreds of billions of dollars in cash. Well, somebody looks at that and think, well, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense because cash isn't really paying well. So why is Warren Buffett
Mhm.
sitting so much in cash when the market's up?
Right.
Warren Buffett adjusts, right? He will look at things and he doesn't just sit in the market and ride it out necessarily. So the reason it depends is it depends on what you are trying to do,
Mm,
how much money you have, and sometimes what your risk level is. So I give you an example. If somebody has $20,000 invested and they lose 10,000 of it, something major has happened because
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
50% loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody has a $250,000 and they lose 10,000 of that, it's not as significant of a loss to that
Right.
person. So
Right.
they can say, well, I understand why I have these investments. I understand why I'm in this fund. Let's say is, whatever the company is the person has, because you can look at your mutual fund and you can see the holdings. So you can see what stocks you have in those list of
Mm,
funds. So you can say,
That's
well,
right.
Apple, I like Apple, people keep buying their iPhones and this other company, I like that company. Okay, that looks good. And, oh, geez, so these tech firms, that's good. Okay. So you have, once you start like having your own little understanding of the fund you're in, and
Mm,
if it's down slightly, and you can say, you know what, it's down a little bit, but it did really, really well these last few years. So I'm
hmm
okay. I'm not really back negative. I've got still a good amount. It's only down a small percentage. Okay, I'll look at it next quarter or next month or something like that. Now, in 2008, I'll pause there to see if there's anything you want to say. I don't want to keep, going from line to line, but is there something else you want to say on that point based on what I've said so far? Or does that all make sense?
Andrew, are you going to ask something?
I had so many questions. So, are we to be responsible for seeing what's, say, we decide on a growth fund, we check that box, a growth fund. Should we drill down and see what companies are in that growth fund and kind of become vested in what we're investing in? And because you just gave a great example, like I might have an iPhone and I'd be happy to invest in Apple. So, should we invest in things that we know? Should we become more knowledgeable? Or
Great question.
Absolutely. There's something we talk to people about called knowledge, responsibility, and control. I didn't create it, but it's a framework to think of. Well, if I I want to be in control of something, because you ask people, do you want to be in control of your money? Yes. Okay, well, if I want to be in control of something, if I have very little knowledge on it, it's very hard for me to control that thing or that area. So let's say I want to ride a motorcycle, right? You see these guys riding the motorcycles and you're like, wow, this guy's so competent. He's in
Hmm.
control of that motorcycle. He can do things, pop willies, very much in control of it because he has knowledge on that subject. He
Right.
knows the subject. So if I'm trying to control my money and my retirement, but I don't have the knowledge on it, I'm not going to feel very comfortable being in control. I'm going to feel the effect of it. I'm not going to feel like, well, I don't really feel comfortable here. Like if I got on a motorcycle, I don't really know how to ride it. I'm not going to feel comfortable there. So it's the same thing. I'm not really going to be able to control it. So I can't really be very responsible. So somebody says, let me give you my motorcycle. You're like, no, I'm not going to be responsible for your motorcycle because I don't know how to control it. I don't know anything about
Right.
it. So if you apply that same thing to your investment and your retirement, you're voting with your dollars. You are saying, I am flowing my financial resources, I'm flowing it towards this company, this fund, or this company through this fund. And you want to make sure it aligns with your values. Sometimes people are investing in things that are opposed to their moral
Mm,
viewpoint.
mm,
But because it's in a fund and it's through their retirement account, and the person hasn't really looked that deeper into it, it may be a mystery, a blind spot for them. So an easy way to go about this without it becoming overwhelming for somebody is
right.
take one, let's say, in your 401k, you pick one fund that you're in. And let's say your K company is Fidelity and you're in Fidelity's growth fund or something like that. So
Mhm.
you can actually go on the website, put in every one of those funds has a ticker symbol. So it's like
mm-hmm,
a few
mm-hmm.
digits and letters and things like that.
Yep.
You can put that into the website and it will show you the holdings of that particular fund. So now you're like, even if you don't know those names of the companies, but now
Mhm.
you know more than you've taken a step beyond what 90% of investors would ever do.
Right.
They may never get to that far. So now you're like, oh, I see this company in here. They got Apple in here. They got Google in here. They got this. Okay, I see that. Okay. So that gives you a little bit more reality on where your money's going.
Mm-hmm.
And then and what it's doing and what's the goal of the fund. And it will tell you a little on the bottom, will tell you
Okay.
a little bit like this is a growth fund trying to maintain 50% in bond, let's say 50% in stocks and whatever. It will tell you kind of what the goal of that fund is. So that way you know,
Mm-hmm.
oh, does this fit me? Does this fit what I'm trying to do?
Right.
So that way you can have a little bit more reality on it.
That's good to know. So, yeah, and then I think some of these funds, you might not know all of them, the companies within the fund, but the top companies in that fund you more than likely know or should know, like the Apples, the Nvidias of the world, the Microsoft, the Google. You'll see those at the top of a lot of the funds, but that's tech heavy though. I have another question, and that's kind of leading from what you just said. Are target date funds actually helping people? I had a target date fund maybe 30 years ago, and I hadn't looked at it, and it was terrible. When I finally did look at it, I was like, "What was I doing for 10, 20 years?" I didn't look at it. So, what do you think about target date funds?
I think they're good if a person doesn't know what to do. Because what they're trying to do is they were trying to be helpful in simplifying it because they didn't really handle the education part in the beginning. How does a person become educated as an investor? So while a person just signs up for their job, doesn't know a lot about investments, the HR people don't know about investments either. And so what does a person do? And they say, well, put it in this fund that has a target date for when you retire, and then you'll be good. And
Mhm.
whether that works or not,
Right.
it tries to simplify the decision-making process. That's really what they were trying to do with that. Well,
Okay.
you're gonna retire in 25 years, pick this one, and that's the date you're gonna retire, and that puts it. We've evaluated a lot of these, and a lot of times the person, when they really look at it years later, they're not super thrilled with it because sometimes it's not really the year they're going to retire, or it doesn't really match their risk tolerance. It's kind of putting everybody in the same bucket based on some arbitrary date you're going to retire. And it tries to adjust or compensate as you get closer and closer to that date. And it tends to be more and more conservative as you get towards that date. So you started with a lot of stocks, depending on how many years you are from retirement. And then as you get closer and closer to retirement, that fund shifts more and more towards bonds. And that may or may not be your risk tolerance. So it tries to compensate for the fact that people may not know exactly how they want to invest, or may not have the knowledge themselves, or may not have a professional helping them. So the idea was it was trying to be helpful. And
Hmm.
whether that did or not, it's kind of up in the air. Some people like it, some people don't. Most of the people that I've seen that looked at it have not been very satisfied with it. That's just my experience based on that.
Interesting.
Okay.
If I haven't looked at my 401k in a decade or more, what, if any, risk have I, either I've uh, averted the risk, or what am I getting myself into by not staying on top of the 401k?
Well, it depends on the 10 years. These last 10 years have been pretty good market wise. So, you would look at it and you probably would have more money in there than you thought. And person would probably, oh my God,
Yeah,
I'm happy.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
I didn't look at this thing for 10 years. And
Right,
so, but the person doesn't know why. They just know
right,
they're happy and it's up and they're like, oh, good. Wow, I didn't think I had this much. No, oh my goodness. I was thinking, man, it's so bad. And then look at
right,
it. So we had that happen a lot. Now, if this was 2000 and you go back 10 years and and you hadn't looked at it for 10 years and you looked at it and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, look like that.
right,
Where did my money go?
right.
What
The
happened?
bottom fell out a year ago,
Right.
sir. You didn't see that.
Yeah. So it really depends on kind of the time horizon,
Mm,
but it's something that people should look at, not to be the effect of it, really so that they're confronting it.
hmm
Just so they don't have a back off on it. Just looking at their statement, you'll start to find sometimes 401k statements, they aren't what they seem. And I'll
hmm
give you an example of that. They are not what they seem. So an example is years ago, you'd get your rate of return of the fund. I'm invested in this fund. What's my rate of return? That's what I want to know. I want to know how I'm doing. And then somewhere along the way, they changed it to something called your personal rate of return. Now,
mm,
here's the difference. Personal rate of return sometimes includes your contributions. You add money into it because your return grew personally. But when you're thinking with return, you're not thinking with my money I added to it. You're thinking
right.
with how much the investment actually grew. So
hmm
because in 401ks you're adding money into it every month. So even if the investment was flat, your account still is higher because you were adding money to it every month. So if that
hmm
investment actually made no money, it would be masked by the fact that you added your contributions into it. And then the match and everything. So you're like, oh, this is good. So sometimes is masked. The actual return is masked because they changed the definition to your personal rate of return. So if you ever look at a statement, and so sometimes when we're going over these things with clients, we'll show that to them. I'll say, look, this is what this says, your personal rate of return, and this is the definition of personal rate of return. Usually they define it. And I said, what do you think that means to you? What does that mean to you? And they'll look at it and read it and like, it seems like money I'm putting in gets added to it and that factors in. I'm like, yes, the money you're adding gets factored into it. So it's a way that masks if that it makes it makes it look a lot better, or it in some ways hides the fact that that fund did not perform as well, but your contributions was added to it. So that's one way sometimes statements, but if you're able to look at your statements, you start to gain more reality on it. You start, okay, so this says this says that, and here's another real life example of this. We had a client the other day. I was going and reviewing a statement with him from his retirement account from his previous job. So we're going over it, and he says, "It looks like this account is going to pay me X amount of dollars. And based on the amount he has in that account, I know that account is not going to pay him that amount of dollars." So I
Right.
said, so we're going over it. And I'm like, He said, but I can't figure out how come they're going to pay me so much money from this account. And I explained to him, I said, oh, they're not going to pay you this much money from this account. He was thinking he was going to get something like $3,000 a month from this account.
Hmm.
And I said, no, this account is only going to pay you about $400 a month. And
That's a
what that
big difference.
account did, here's the trick they did. They estimated his Social Security payment. They don't know what his Social Security payment is going to be. They estimated his Social Security payment and they added it there. So to him, it looked like this, because it's on that statement, it looked like, and it says your payment, your monthly payment would be blah. And he said, oh my goodness, what if I would have retired thinking I'd be getting.
Anticipating.
Yes. So now he's factoring in Social Security because he looks on a Social Security website and he gets his estimated amount, and he looks at this and he gets this. And so it wasn't clear to him that he wasn't going to get this $3,000 a month from this account, because he's like, there's no way this account is going to pay $3,000 a month, because it just didn't have the amount of money in there to do that.
Right.
And so sometimes when you start looking at your statements, you start to get more reality on what you have, what it's doing, what it is. And then you can really have the knowledge, responsibility, and control over that pool of money. And it makes it harder for somebody to take advantage of you.
I love that, Martin, because listen, as we get closer to our retirement date,
Mm.
I'm 60 and I really need to know. I need to dissect those. I need to know before I'm about to retire what really the reality of my money. And
Right.
so you just gave us a great example of most people don't understand. I mean, don't understand what's on their statements. So just having someone like you, I guess, to help us break it down or just take it upon ourselves to learn it ourselves, I think is super important. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
story.
Absolutely.
That personal. What did you call it? The personal growth account.
Personal rate of return.
Personal rate. Because as you started talking, I was thinking to myself, that sounds like a glorified savings account. So that's a good thing. I'll have to look at that. I have a couple of accounts. I have to look and see how how they're trying to do some trickery on me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they match it. They add yours plus the growth. They have a formula that they do, and they formulate this, and they tell you this is your personal rate of return. And the idea is the way they pitch it to people, the way they say it is, we're making it simple for the person to see everything. What's the actual real, the increase is what they're saying. But if the
Right.
increase comes from part of my contribution, I'd want to know. I want to see the actual returns of the fund.
Right.
That's really what I'm looking at.
Very true. Very true.
Indeed.
Okay, so with all that really good information, so what are some simple checks that we can do right now to know if our 4K is working for us or against us
Mm.
right now?
So you want to start by just getting your statements. So the first step is getting access to your statement, looking at it. Usually you'll get quarterly statements or annual statements, depending on what time of year it is, and looking at it and seeing if there's anything there that's the person doesn't understand. First thing is look at, how is the money allocated? What funds is it in? Go on that website, look at the holdings of it. The next thing you can do is try not to get too technical with some of it. But if somebody wants to dive a little bit deeper into how is this doing? Is it performing well compared to, because then you have to have compared to something else. So is it performing well compared to what? Right? So compared to something else. So then you can look at, one of the things I tell people to look at is when you look at the mutual fund you're in, the mutual fund would generally have some historical average annual rate of return. So you'll have sometimes the year to date. So right now, whatever month it is, they may show the year to date. What's the return that year up to that point? Then you have the 1 year return based on when you look at it, which could be from last year, this point, to this year, this point. And I'll tell people, look at the 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. The reason you look at that is it's a very quick way to see, did this fund suffer big losses? Yeah. So if let's say the 1 year return is like 20%, and then a 10-year return is like 5%. That means the average, when you average it out, some years were negative. So I'm just going to give you some wild examples here. But some years were negative. That's why the 10-year average. So most people are not short-term investors. They're investing for many years.
Right.
You have your money in the fund for many years. And so you want to look at that 3 year, 5 year, 10-year number and just get a sense of what it's doing. That's your real average. That's kind of what it will reflect. Some years are going to be higher, some years are going to be lower if you're in the market. There are other ways to grow your money without being directly invested in the market. But if you're talking about 401ks, most of the time people are in mutual funds. That's generally your default investment option in mutual funds, and in 401ks is your mutual funds. And part of that has to do a lot with Wall Street. When 401ks started becoming available, 401k was an accident. It wasn't there was no cohesive plan to create a retirement system in America called the 401k. That was
Hmm.
there was no testing on it. There was no deliberation on it. There was no meeting of the minds on it. It was an accident. It was an accidental thing. So here's the story of it. People had pensions.
Hmm.
Going back to the Romans, pensions been around for a long time. If you were in a Roman military, when you retired, to give a pension because they didn't want the legionnaires to attack. They're like, let's
Right.
give them some
Hmm.
money, give them some land, and just let's keep
Right.
paying them. So the
Right.
all
Keep them
these,
close.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of thing. So then pensions worked. People retired successfully with pensions. And then people started living longer and longer, and companies wanting to be more and more competitive realized that the cost of having a pension, because essentially the,
Yeah.
the word pension means future pay. Basically, I'm
Hmm.
doing work now, and then I'm going to work
Hmm.
here at this company for 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is. And then I'm
Hmm.
still going to, the loyalty of working here, I'm going to be building up future pay. And then when I leave, the company's going to keep paying me that pension.
Right. Right.
So in the
Yeah.
military, you still get a pension. Work there for 20 years, you get a pension in the military. Government gets pensions. Some companies still offer them, but not as much. In 19, the 401k was a just kind of a obscure little tax code. It was updated, put in the tax code so that people could, executives of companies could store bonus money and not pay taxes on it that year. They were trying to defer some of the taxes. And so it was just this kind of little line in tax code. And then there's a benefits consultant that was looking at how could he save the company money. And that's where it came out. It was not for
Oh.
employees. It wasn't created as a benefit to employees. It was how do we save the company money? And so this benefits is this guy who created a benefit, because it's called the kind of the orchestrator of the 401k. He didn't invent it, but he was the one who suggested it be used this way. He
Hmm.
presented it to a company, and the company said, "Oh, we'll take that on." And what they started to do was they started to then phase out the pension plans. So as new employees came in, didn't get a pension anymore, you got this thing called a 401k.
Bait and switch. Oh my God.
Which
Classic.
is which was optional. The pension was not an optional thing, though, was it? The pension was part of employment.
Yes, people was kind
And
of a
Hmm.
401
standard thing. Yeah.
okay, and 401k became an optional thing for the employee,
That's true.
which
Good
means that
point.
the employer would or would not invest in it, which was also a savings in a way.
Yes. So
Wow.
the trick was, so then how do you convince people? How do you drastically change people's retirement? An entire system that's worked for hundreds of years, thousands of years going back to Romans. How do you change that without people getting upset? And so that was what this guy was trying to solve, because there's people might get, "Well, why are you taking away my pension? What do you mean?" And so the idea was we would give you a match. You put money in, we're going to match you.
Mm,
Right.
And so the
that's smart.
match, the
Sounds
match
good to
became the
me.
the match became the carrot.
Right.
Oh, you're gonna give me some money? Oh, you're gonna give me money for retirement. That sounds good. Because they weren't thinking that the 401k was kind of not, I mean, the pension was not on people's minds. They didn't
Right,
think much about it. The company handled it. They weren't thinking much with, well, the company's putting this much money away. They weren't thinking of
right,
that. But now all of a sudden, if the company is gonna you put money in, the company's going to match you. Now it looks like the company's actually directly giving you money
absolutely.
that you can see every 2 weeks.
Yep, yep.
So it was a way that got presented to people. It was kind of a way it got marketed to people in that sense, so that people will be receptive to the idea of no
Mm,
longer having pensions.
mm,
Mm.
And people used to get bonuses, and now their bonuses are like their match. So they give you a match.
right,
Every time people still get some bonuses, but now the bonuses was like the
Yeah.
match. And
Yeah.
the company essentially reduced their costs, because if you don't put money in, they don't match you, so they don't have to give you that money. Whereas with the pension, you have to put that
100%.
money out.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. A quick education on the bait and switch switcheroo.
Right, right. Because I didn't know it was a tax code. That's something that's new news to me. That's
Dang.
that's good information to have.
Very good information to have. They actually save money by getting rid of the pensions and making it look like, hey, but we're going to give you some money. Don't you
Right,
worry. But
Yes.
they were saving millions in dollars just by doing that switch.
right.
Yes. And then Wall Street came in there, because now you remember 401k is a bucket. So we go back to that point. 401k is a bucket. What is going to be the default investment in this bucket?
Mm.
Wall Street saw the opportunity to provide the default investment. Here's why Wall Street did that. So I study history. I study the financial history of things because I like to know how the things come about, how did it become, where versus origins, things like that. So it's if you go back to it's called a Roaring Twenties. In 1920s, you had a big boom in America, stock market, everybody's investing.
Yep. Yep.
And what started to happen is you had people called promoters. Promoters were people who would promote a particular stock or an investment, and they would get money for promoting this investment. Now, whether the
Mm-hmm.
investment was good for you or not, the promoters, well, they got a bunch of people and they got paid on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then people realized that, they could manipulate things. So if I hire a bunch of promoters for some company, I just bought stock in this company. Now I want the stock price to go up. Well, what am I
Mm-hmm.
going to, I'm going to hire a bunch of promoters. They're going to go promote it to, you know, the average American out there, get them excited, and they put their money in this fund, and then I exit. And so you had a lot of these things happening in the 20s, and you had all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
people manipulating the markets greatly. In
Like now.
1929, you had this big stock market crash, and you had the Great Depression in the 30s, and
Mm-hmm.
people lost their life savings. They just lost a taste for the stock market. And
Right.
they did not want to be as invested. Or like, we invested in this company. This company was bust. They felt like they got manipulated. And
Right.
so for decades, people were not really investing as much in the stock market. They went back to things that were guaranteed. Pensions were guaranteed. There were other things from like in the insurance industry, annuities, things like that. People moved towards things that were guaranteed and safer. And so
Or
now,
they're
yeah,
under their mattress and in their
yeah,
shoe boxes.
exactly. Keep it in the mattress. So
The
you'll talk
shoebox.
to
Yeah.
grandparents and great grandparents, and that was because that's what they got. It was very traumatic for people, entire
Yeah.
nation going through a
I
massive
can
depression.
imagine.
Right.
And so now you fast forward a few decades later, Wall Street now has this problem. How do you get people now putting money back into the industry that you're in after you've had this calamity happen?
Uh-huh.
And so they needed a way to keep marketing to people, market people and buy these stocks and market this and market that. And then the 401k presented an opportunity. So the decline of pension started in, 1979, 1980. That's when they changed some of the rules in retirement and made the 401k widely available to people. Wall Street swooped in and it provided the mutual funds in your 401k. So that's how those funds became available there is through Wall Street, making it available to these companies so that you can now
So,
automatically send them money.
are
Mm.
we the first generation to? Because I'm Generation X, as Ange and I are.
Mhm.
Are we the first generation to like be forced into creating our own retirement savings?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow,
Prior
that's a
to
good question.
1980, there was no 401k. Well, almost everybody has a 401k today is older than a 401k. It
Yeah.
happened
Wow.
during that period.
Wow. Wow. That's an interesting way.
Mhm. So let's okay, Martin, you gave us a wake-up call, I hope,
Yeah, for
for
sure.
our wise builders, our listeners out there, which means just pull out the 401k statements, learn a little bit, like you said, take one fund, see what companies are within that fund. Do I agree with morally or ethically about what that company is doing, or do I care? But at least I know, and I feel like I
Right.
can get more control of my money. So,
Exactly. Yeah, for
Good.
sure. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, I know you're probably extremely busy, but if the wise community could take one thing away from this conversation today, what would you suggest it be?
It's that money can be understood. Money, finances, retirement, they can all be understood. There are vested interests that don't want you to understand it because
Mm,
the less you understand it, the more they can control you in that area.
mm-hmm,
So it can be understood. And that's the biggest thing. It's like a lot of times people look at money and look at getting to mechanics of it.
mm-hmm,
Like, what should I do here? What should I do there? And the senior thing to mechanics is the mental part of it. How do you think about it?
mm-hmm,
And so I go back to knowledge, responsibility, and control. The knowledge is how you think about it. If I can think about it correctly, if I can think about what should I be doing, and I can just start to increase my knowledge, I'll take a little bit more responsibility on the subject. And to that
mm-hmm.
degree, I'll have a little bit more control and a little bit more control. It's like when you are learning to drive a car. When you first start learning to drive a car, you can't really control the thing. You don't know
Right,
when to hit brakes, how to
air,
turn,
right,
and all
right,
that.
right, right.
So you start getting a little bit more knowledge. a little bit more knowledge. You can be more responsible with the car now. Now you can control it. So if you're watching or listening to this and you're like, I don't really have a lot of knowledge in this area, or I don't know exactly, or I don't feel as much in control. It's not accidental.
Hmm.
Mm.
That's a word.
It's not accidental. There is a reason why financial education, financial literacy is not heavily promoted. You can learn lots of different things. We're in information age. If we're in
Yeah.
information age and it's really information age, how come people still have troubles with their finances?
Mm. It's a fair point.
Yeah, and the fact that, we have this show, we're wanting to get that literacy, that financial literacy out to the people like ourselves, Reg and I and others who
100%.
are our age or maybe in their 40s on up, who haven't saved up enough for their retirement because of lack of knowledge or other things. But what would you say, Martin, are some final words of encouragement for us who have not saved enough yet, but are getting close to retirement?
Most people, here's what I'll say. Because I see it all the time. You need a terminal there and terminal is like another person, right? We call this a two terminal universe. So you got positive, negative, all that. You got love and hate. You got a two terminal universe. And so when you have another person there that you can discuss your financial position with, it's extremely helpful. It's one of the best things you can do. So finding somebody that you trust. Now, if you're like a spouse or something like that, you may need another party so that you and your spouse is one, and then you talk to somebody else, like somebody
Somebody
who's a
else. Yeah.
professional. Find somebody who you know, like, and trust. And this goes to Angela. This goes to feeling if somebody's feeling behind, because there's a lot of times we talk to people and they think they're behind, but they're not.
Mm.
There's a lady I talked to a few weeks ago. She wants to retire. She thinks when she started talking to me, she thought she had to work 4 more years. She wants to work 4 more years at a job she doesn't like so she can save up enough money to move to this other state she really wants to go to. Her goal is to move to this other state and be retired there. She has a little bit of retirement money. She didn't think she had enough money to retire.
Mm.
And so we looked over her finances, right? So it costs her a certain amount of money to live. So that's your baseline. It costs you a certain amount of money to live and run your life every month. Then you look at what resources do you have? Are things they're not things like some of the things we do is we help people boost their retirement accounts you can put your money into that would give you a bonus. So for example, in this lady's case, we're able to get her a bonus on her retirement account. There's companies that will pay you to reposition your money. So she got a massive bonus on her retirement account. It pushed her account up, and based on the income, we can take that money and turn it into a pension for her personal pension.
Mm.
Between that and Social Security, the lady has enough money to meet her ongoing expenses that she won't run out of money. Social Security is going to pay her, and this personal pension is going to pay her. She didn't have to wait 4 more years at a job she doesn't like anymore.
Mm.
My God.
People may
Hallelujah.
be better off than they think, but if you don't know the information that's available to you, a person could be missing out. So it's worth having a conversation with somebody. Say, okay, I think I'm behind, but a lot of times when we look, I'm like, you're doing a lot better than you think. Because sometimes we live in a society where sometimes people compare themselves to other people and they compare themselves to how they think other people are doing. And so sometimes you could feel like you're so behind when in reality, compared to what you're trying to do, you may not be at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes it's that conversation. I tell people, don't be afraid to have a conversation with somebody. Have a stable terminal there, somebody you can talk to about your finances, and then tell them what you're trying to do and tell them everything. And make sure it's somebody that can help you, or somebody who's a professional that you like or you trust, and things like that.
Mhm.
Well, going down that path, sir, how can people reach out to you so that you can boost their accounts?
So one of the ways you can do that is I'll put our company email here is just info@mwealthgroup.com.
In Wealth Group. Okay. Okay.
And that's an email somebody can send. People send us email all the time and say, hey, look, I'm looking for somebody to help talk to me about your finances. We do a complimentary discovery call where it's really meant to find out where the person's at, what they're doing or not doing, and what they might need help with. The first thing is, can we help the person? Where are they at? What do they need help with? And can we help them? And that's kind of a good starting point. If they go to our website, mwealthgroup.com, there's a little chat box there. They can message there, but emailing us is your best way to get a hold of us. And that way we can then coordinate having a conversation and seeing where you are. And we don't charge for that initial conversation. It's really so we can get to know the person a little bit. find out what they're doing, find out where they're at, and then see, are there things we have that could be helpful to them.
Tell me what the website is one more time.
mwealthgroup.com.
mwealthgroup.com.
And M is for Matthews. It's a family-owned business. We have
Nice.
a
That's right.
team all across the country, but my wife Chelsea and I started a company, so that's our
Okay.
primary thing. She's giving me a note here. So my wife Chelsea's here. She's giving me a note that says there's a website they can go to if they want to get a free discovery call.
Okay.
I just give that site here. 6buildingblocks.com/discovery, and it's the number 6. So
The
6
number
building
6.
blocks.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask. I'll make sure I have that up
6buildingblocks.com.
there
Yeah.
so that
6buildingblocks.com
everybody can access it.
/discovery. Yeah. And they can just request a time that's available, whenever time is available on the calendar, and then we'll meet with them and just have a discussion.
Sounds good.
Well, sounds great. So thank you, Chelsea. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Martin, thank you for joining us. Chelsea, I know you're back there. Thank you too.
Yes,
We
indeed.
appreciate you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Help kind of pass this information along. Martin gave us some jewels today. So share, comment, all those good things so that we can kind of boost the subscriptions around here.
That's right. And check out full show highlights from this episode with action steps from this episode. If you missed any, you can check out our free Substack. The link is below.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, we'll see you next episode. I'm Reg.
And I'm Angela Kay, reminding you we're on this journey together. Until next time, take care.
All right. Welcome to the ride. Thanks, Martin.
You're welcome.